Now, after World War II, you're going to start hearing governments, uh, international organizations, non-government organizations eventually, all talking about the issue of human rights. Okay, so you're going to see a real boost for the human rights movement after World War II. One of the issues that contributed to this human rights movement was the Nuremberg trials. Okay, so Nazi officials were put on trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity that were committed during World War II, such as the Holocaust, for example, right? And who was trying them at this trial? It was the International Military Tribunal, an international organization that was created by the Allies after the war. Now, many Nazi officials received jail sentences, and several were even executed. And this was one of the events that contributed to the rise of the human rights movement. You began to hear people talking about the protection of human rights as far back as the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the international community found out about several atrocities that were carried out by Belgium in its colony in Africa, the Congo. Okay, so human rights is not completely new, but it really gets a boost. The movement gets a boost after World War II. So the Nuremberg trials were an example of the international community holding people accountable for their crimes against humanity. Okay, they're actually doing something about it, right, to enforce human rights. Another step towards the recognition of human rights was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right, which was issued by the United Nations. Right now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognized that all people deserve to have their individual rights protected. Kind of like the Bill of Rights in the US Constitution, right? It protects freedom of speech, freedom of religion, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights also called for the right to have economic and political stability. Okay, so the right to earn a decent wage, right? And that goes beyond the U.S. Constitution. U.S. Constitution doesn't talk about ensuring the right to a decent wage to all Americans, no? So it doesn't do that. Now, unfortunately, there was no way for the UN to enforce the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It just, in a sense, it was just important because it had an impact on the perception that human rights existed and should be protected, okay? Now, the US, the United States, they didn't support the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? Not until 1992, and even then, they just supported part of it, right? They didn't support the economic and social rights that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights promoted. Okay, there was an American delegate to the UN at the time, John Foster Dulles, who didn't want the international community to get involved in U.S. domestic affairs, right? Since like racism and segregation and economic inequalities were pretty much running rampant in the U.S. at the time. So that's why you see the U.S. not promoting or supporting officially the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay. But you will see some attempts by the Truman administration in the United States to try to support civil rights, right, there domestically in the U.S. So Truman is going to attempt to continue aspects of the New Deal, right? Remember we talked about the New Deal. It supported workers in the United States, tried to support Americans. You got Social Security, you got unemployment, you got jobs being provided by the government, various government agencies. That was the New Deal, right? So Truman's trying to move things along in that same direction. His program's called the Fair Deal. And so he's pushing for a raise in the minimum wage. He's trying to expand Social Security to include more people in the United States. And then something else, right? The most scariest thing of all to some people is he's promoting nationalized health care. Okay, ooh, nationalized health care, universal health care. No, the American Medical Association organized a massive campaign to demonize national medical care, right? They call it socialism. Oh, that's not good, especially during the Cold War. We're trying to stop the spread of communism, right? They didn't want government control. They didn't want government regulation of the medical industry, right? Because that may have limited their profits. Okay, but the Republican Congress did not support Truman's fair deal, so most of it doesn't go into an effect, right? It doesn't go into effect. After an unprecedented wave of strikes by workers in several key industries in 1946, so you got this huge wave of strikes, Congress is going to pass the Taft-Hartley Act, which allowed companies to hire workers who were not members of a union. See, before this, workers had to join the recognized union for that company when they took the job, right? And so the Taft-Hartley Act is going to diminish the power of unions in the workplace because not all employers or not all employees were members, right? Which meant that if there was a strike, not everybody's going to walk out because not everybody's part of the union, right? So Taft-Hartley is pretty important for really limiting worker rights and worker organization in unions, okay? The act also gave the president the power to temporarily stop strikes for 8 days. So say you go on strike, you did all this organizing to get everybody to strike, and then the president could step in and say, hey, 8 days, you guys got to cool off. No more strike. You can't resume your strike. That could weaken the momentum of the strike, you see? And workers could also no longer boycott companies that conducted business with their company. That's something called secondary boycotts. So say, for example, if you worked for a company that made shoes, okay, but you want to strike, you want to go out on strike, right? Then you're going to boycott companies that work with the shoe company, right? Maybe there's some leather company that supplies the shoe company with leather, right? And you're going to boycott them because they do business with your company. And then that's going to put pressure on your company to listen to your union's demands, maybe raise your wages or something, right? So this is all because of the Taft-Hartley Act, right? So no secondary boycotts. You know, you don't have to be a part of the union. So Taft-Hartley, this was a major blow for the labor movement,